So, double jeopardy, Barrister Nnadi.
Good afternoon all. Like I did say earlier, Tony Nnadi is my name. I happen to be a lawyer with a specialty in jurisprudence, the area of law that deals with how constitutions are made. And the reason I had to come at so short a notice, you know, when the letter came to me, is the urgency of what we're talking about. And when I saw the theme you chose, Nigeria at breaking point, it seemed, it struck me as people who now know that there's something grievous about to happen. In fact, already happening. Only that if it goes beyond where it is now, everybody everywhere will pay a price. And what we see in the Middle East will become a child's play. The angle from which I was asked to, come to shed some light is the source of that problem. The source of that problem. You know, I talked about diagnosis that will lead to prescription, that could then lead to treatment that will work. If you fail with the diagnosis, your prescription is going to be wrong, and the patient will die. The patient here is the sick Nigeria, and our concern is less for Nigeria than for Nigerians. It's a world of difference. If you mix up the two, you're going to end up killing the people you thought you were going to save. Having listened to some of the things that have been said even on this segment, what we have in our hand is a Nigeria that has become a rogue state. And the global Islamic movement has targeted it to make it their operational base for what they are doing globally, having been challenged in the Middle East. And it's not something that began last night. It's something that has come a long way. And they've at this time succeeded in establishing a passage from where they had to relocate to where they target. And on the last page of the paper you have, you will see the map of Nigeria. The size of the problem is this, that to all this Atlantic Ocean, to the bottom here, on all these sides are ungoverned spaces. Chad, Niger Republic, Northern Mali, and most of what we call Northern Cameroon are just a satellite playground for what the one you call Nigeria. But that Nigeria collapsed in 1966 when the constitutions that brought them together, were overturned. And a rogue federal government emerged, operated by a caliphate. And when you hear caliphate, the Islam they put on it is to confuse those who do not know what it is all about. It's a political movement that grabs sovereign spaces and actually target the whole global, how much of it they can get. But they always require some launching by some operational basis in which they won't be challenged. And what's going on there is that they have found, having hijacked that federation, the sovereign space, housing that federation that collapsed in 1966, becoming a federal government. I'm sure you hear about federal government of Nigeria all the time. Becoming a federal government in a situation where the federation had collapsed, but operating a unitary system in which they're in charge of everybody's bedroom. They've seized all the assets of the owners of the place, and The only thing remaining now, and that's where the urgency of it comes in, the only thing remaining now is that they are eliminating what could become future claims of the indigenous peoples of the area by cleansing them off. They've already finished the task in this upper part that they've imposed Sharia. We have 12 states that simultaneously impose Sharia in a supposedly secular federation. Having done that, they also found their way to Government House. The Boko Haram you hear was just their mechanism to bulldoze their way to Government House. The day after the election, they went into the mission for which they got to that Government House, and that mission was to overrun the rest of this territory. And where they are now, if you look closely to the map, you will see the middle belt. You hear about Benue, Plateau, and all of that. They just moving upon the communities, removing them, and bringing their kinsmen, because the Fulani, incidentally, do not have they are an itinerant population. They are nomads, all the way from Gambia to Senegal, all of the West African, and they are bringing, as they sack one community, they bring, they already allotted the whole place up to Port Harcourt to, Fulani of one country or the other. The people they call herdsmen are the advanced team, the ones who have come, like, about the promised land. When they got there, there were giants occupying the place, and they had to be removed for those who came to take their inheritance. That's what they're doing now. The owners of the various places are being removed for those who say it is their inheritance. They actually tell us to our faces that the place was given to them by Allah, and they will do everything to take every part of it. They've succeeded in taking the assets of all the sites. You hear about Niger Delta and the agitation for their oil and gas. All those things have been sequestered long time ago from the point of that collapse of the constitutional arrangements. And I call it rogue federal government because if you have a federation, imagine the United States, in which the constitution that secures everybody is overthrown by maybe not even any big state. California is big enough. Imagine if it were Long Island or some Maine in the northeast here that overthrows the constitution of the United States and becomes the owner of the whole of California, the oil assets of Texas, and all of that, and manages to impose a constitution in which you can no longer generate electricity for yourself, you can no longer police yourself, you can no longer elect who will govern you, because they have to do everything from the center. And in that kind of a situation, having secured that ownership permanently by brigandage, they now want to remove future claims by removing the human beings. It's ethnic cleansing that is called, and I'm sure we had the Danjuma shout. So if we do not realize that that's what's going on, we probably will be saying, let's go save Nigeria. It's not Nigeria that's in trouble. Nigeria died a long time ago. It's the Nigerians trapped in that space that are in trouble. And what can be done for them now is to recognize the reality of the situation and the implication for the global community. Because if they go beyond where they are now, they say they're going to election. You know what are the election for? They want to get another 4 years to sweep through what is left into the Atlantic waterfront here. And what has happened on ground there is that somehow we've managed, in the organization I'm secretary to, we've managed to wake up the owners of the rest of the place to say, if we do nothing, these guys have been decimating piecemeal. It will come to you at some point. And when it comes, nobody's going to come to your aid. In a situation where, if anybody's in doubt as to who is the source of the terror, the governor in Kaduna State, you remember the one on the Christmas Eve, they imposed curfew. People were not to move around. And everybody thought, well, at least for the period of the curfew, we could relax in our village. These people came from nowhere and sacked, they killed over 890-something people on the eve of Christmas, people who were getting ready to just celebrate the next day. And the governor, his response to all of that was to say, that they went, that the ones killing were Fulani from outside Nigeria, and that he had, as governor, gone to give them money in 14 different countries to plead with them to stop coming to kill people. And if you interpret it further, you will see that they know where the killers come from. There is their responsibility, ordinarily, to protect the people who are in their domain. They are not doing that, and they take money from the treasury to go to give to those people. And it's simply the reason he said what he said. He told them that Fulani now in charge. That means you don't have to do any more of this. We're already here. Take it easy. We'll find a way to deal with the rest of it. They are taking over the place, and if they do, in no time, the whole of these territories we're pointing at, the whole of that Chad, bigger than Nigeria in landmass. Niger, bigger than Nigeria in landmass. Northern Mali, bigger than Nigeria. If those three alone, get sucked in, because that's what's going to happen, you have a monster operating from it, because the rest of West Africa will just collapse into, is it Benin Republic or Togo? Which of them? They will suck that in, and they will have in their hand the proceeds of the oil and gas that is sold there to finance their global operations. And anybody who will be coming here to fight with them, to try to remove them, like the fight that has been going on in the Middle East. Middle East is desert. You can see from 1 million miles what you want to do. But if that comes up here, and we're very close to getting to that, if they escape with going to this election that will renew and reinforce that constitution they have put in place. They call it democracy. I'm sure we all know about the apartheid South Africa. The closest to what is going on in that place is that apartheid, in which a minority stranger population became the owner of the entire space to the exclusion of the owners. And they have succeeded in keeping it almost 20 years. They want this one more election, since they've got their man who has the capacity to do the evil that is required to finish the business. That's where they're going. And what we have done is to get all these ones to say, this constitution is not of us. The one we made, you overthrew. For 50 years, we've been asking that we discuss. You say we can no longer discuss. You go pull arms from everywhere, seize power in government house, pretend it's all a democracy, killing everybody, and now we won't go with you any further. The help that the global community can give to the situation is to listen, to understand what the problem is, and to go to nip it in the bud, because if it grows any larger than it is, now like you do with cancer, what we've done is offers a quarantine plan to that situation. If that quarantine is not in place in good time, the global community will pay a very high price, and that is avoidable. Thank you very much.
I was in Plateau when my friend's wife, who was pregnant in one of the crises, was disemboweled. And the gory picture is still in my memory. I can't erase it. And anytime I want to oh, Stephen, why are you so concerned? I just remember these victims.
It was Paul, the apostle, who says, "For me to live is Christ, to die is gain." In 2001, I became one of the first ministers to be abducted by Islamic militants. Just flashback 2001 religious crisis in Jos. It left over 1,000 people dead. For 10 good days, no single person was going in and out. In those 10 good days, I was abducted for 5 days. No one knows exactly where I was. At the point, I was the senior chaplain at Ekwa Evangel Hospital, which is now called Bingham University Teaching Hospital, right in downtown Jos. Why was I abducted? My area of specialty is West African Islam. attorney. He is an attorney. He has well articulated what I have studied as a theologian over 10 years in seminary. Thank you, brother. Second abduction. In 2002, I took the same hospital for outreach, what we call medical outreach, to Yelwan Shandam. June 26, 2002, second religious crisis, outbreak in Yelwa. I was still abducted. For 5 days, no one knows where I was. But in both of the abduction, God rescued me. Remember, my name is Yakubu, and it's more closely associated to Hausa Arabic. Actually, I was supposed to be called Jacob, but I used the name Yakubu. That name gives me favor, even within those who abducted me. Please, we need an envoy. If I am alive today, it's because of the grace of God. Others may not be able to have this opportunity. Please, please. Thank you, Greg, for coming. Thank you.
Well, our time is running very fast, but you will remember that a few years ago, Sudan was all the rage. The Janjaweeds and all the, you don't even want to remember it. But from this same city, help came through God. And the key players that made that possible are still here. So I would like to ask Faith McDonnell, thank you for what you did with Sudan. Thank you. Please, can we just praise God? Let's have church.
Oh, gee. Okay. Well, I am Faith McDonnell from the Institute on Religion and Democracy, where I direct the International Religious Liberty Program. But, Stephen, you're wrong. I was not going to talk about how the Sudan experience fits in with this. I was going to talk about my Nigeria experience, because I am an Anglican of the Anglican Church of Nigeria under Archbishop Ben Kwashi. So I have a very strong connection to Nigeria because of that. I did work on getting the first Sudan special envoy, former Senator John Danforth, and he did a great job. He did what needed to be done. He saved an entire ethnicity of people, the people of the Nuba Mountains, because the Nuba Mountains of Sudan were about ready to be wiped out by the Islamic Khartoum regime, and Danforth put in place what he called the benchmarks, that if Sudan was serious about making peace, then they needed to follow certain benchmarks, and one was stop eradicating the people of the Nuba Mountains, and it worked. So that's all I'm going to say about the Sudan issue, but I really just want to talk about Nigeria, because, back... What the pastor was talking about, I remember that. I've been working on Nigeria for about 22 years. I brought former Archbishop Josiah to meet, Theron, to meet Senator Rick Santorum years ago when things were happening in Kaduna. This is not a new subject, and my Nigerian brothers and sisters know that, but maybe not everybody knows how far back this goes. This goes back beyond Boko Haram. This goes back beyond weaponized Fulani. I mean, there were Fulani with weapons, but not the kind of weapons they have today. But I just pulled some stuff out of my files. I just want to tell you a few little things. October 21st, 1999, Islamic law to be introduced in northern Nigerian state, and that was Zamfara state. And they promised it won't apply to the Christians, the governor said. And a Pastor Sunday Mabong, president of the Nigerian Christian Association, said the introduction of Islamic law is worrying and could lead to a dangerous period in Nigeria's history. Well, that was prophetic. In 2000, sectarian bloodshed in Nigeria, and just as my brother said, let's get rid of these crazy phrases about sectarian and clashes between two groups and all this false moral equivalence. It's not a sectarian bloodshed. It's a targeted trying to exterminate the Christians in Nigeria, especially then. News has reached the Anglican Communion Office that the Bishop of Kaduna is literally confined to his home with his family and 6 other bishops. They were on their way to synod to elect a new primate of Nigeria. So that must have been when Nicholas Oko was being, or no, maybe Akinola. But anyway, that's Anglican stuff. But this has been going on. 2001, January 11. This was when the radical people in the city reacted to a lunar eclipse and decided, oh, it's the Christians' fault. It's the infidels' fault. We're going to wipe out the Christians. That was the kind of thing that was happening in 2001. 2002, Nigeria riots. Scores of Christians have been slaughtered and hundreds injured. This was because of the Miss World contest. Remember that? Yeah. They burned down the offices of This Day newspaper. So, the time a few years ago when they burned down a European newspaper for having cartoons about Muhammad, that was no new thing. This had happened in Nigeria years before. We worked on trying to get Boko Haram made into a foreign terrorist organization for 4 years. So when Greg talks about the State Department being resistant to the idea of a special envoy, they were resistant to the idea of making Boko Haram a foreign terrorist organization. Just listen to this. Even the day that they did designate it, which as my brother said, had to do with the Kenyan attack, but it was the day when wonderful Pastor Adamu was testifying before Chris Smith, actually, who had been shot in the face by Boko Haram and left for dead, and suddenly the State Department changed their mind. But even that day when they testified, when Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield, testified, she said, Boko Haram's activities call our attention not just to violence, but also to poverty and inequality in Nigeria. It is true that there is poverty and inequality in Nigeria, I said. This is from my article. But none of it touches Boko Haram. They carried out their latest slaughter in 2 armored personnel cars and 7 double-cabin pickups, according to Punch magazine. And they had their own caterer going with them wherever they were killing people. So poverty and inequality have nothing to do with why Boko Haram does what it does. And in fact, Congressman Chris Smith said to that, that's an insult to poor people all over the globe, because just because you're poor doesn't mean you attack other people. So it's been a long time that we've needed a special envoy for Nigeria, and as part of Save the Persecuted Christians Coalition, and in my job as the International Religious Liberty Program Director at IR&D, I'm going to do all I can to get that to happen. Just going back even further, this was following independence from Great Britain in 1960. Sir Amadou Bello said, the new nation called Nigeria should be an estate of our great-grandfather, Uthman Dan Fodio. Now, you talked about the estate of the caliphate. That's what they're saying. This is our property, and these people who are on it need to be wiped out. We must ruthlessly prevent a change of power. We use the minorities in the north as willing tools and the south as a conquered territory, and never allow them to rule over us, and never allow them to have control over their future. So, Westerners, we tend to have very short memories, but this was declared then, and they're still working towards it, just as the Islamic Khartoum regime in Sudan is working towards a caliphate. Caliphate is nothing to laugh at, whether it be from ISIS, from Boko Haram, from the Khartoum regime, from Al-Shabaab, any of those groups. So we need a special envoy, and we need the right special envoy.
And the purpose of this event is to try to make sure that the Congress of the United States, the administration of this country, our friends and allies around the world, and not least, of course, people of goodwill in this country and elsewhere, are on notice that Nigeria is at risk of disastrous collapse, that the forces that we've just been talking about are in the process of taking down a country that is the most populous in Africa, with horrific implications, not just for the immediate vicinity, the Lake Chad region as it's known, but for that continent and almost certainly others beyond. Congressman Wolf mentioned Bono, talking about a catastrophe that would make what has happened to Europe in the past few years, as a relatively small number of people migrated there with unbelievably chaotic consequences, look like a day at the beach by comparison. We're on notice. And the question is, do we have to wait until this horror is upon us before something is done about it? Or do we take steps now to try to prevent that? And I don't think any of us is saying that this is a panacea, but the appointment of the appropriate individual with the requisite authority. I just wanted to underscore what Congressman Wolf said about having the President of the United States essentially personally empowering Senator Danforth to lead the effort on behalf of our country to alleviate that situation. That has to be done again, and it has to be an empowering of a person with the stature and the capabilities needed to do two really vital things. One is to pull together the government agencies that have responsibility for pieces of a problem like Nigeria. The Defense Department, as well as, of course, the State Department, USAID, the UN mission of the United States, the National Security Council, and others, to come together with a common, appropriate, and much needed policy approach. And then secondly, at least as importantly, to be able authoritatively to represent what that approach is to the government of Nigeria. So they know who they're dealing with. They know that this is, in fact, the policy, and they can't go, looking for people who will provide some sort of alternative that might not require as much of them. So it's those two vitally important things that have to be done. And on behalf of, again, the Save the Persecuted Christians Coalition and team, I just want to say I think this is a moment of truth, a moment when we will find a difference being made by an administration that is about making a difference on behalf of religious freedom and those who are being denied it around the world. And let me just take a moment to say, as bad as this situation is, it is just one of the areas in the world in which particularly Christians are suffering. By some estimates, it's as small a number as 215 million Christians being brutally persecuted. By others, it's as high as 500,000. 500 million. This is on our watch. It is unconscionable. It must be challenged, contested, and if possible, stopped. And that's what this coalition is about. And I pray that we will be able, with the help of people like Congressman Estes and Congressman Wolf and the Archbishop and our coalition and countless others to see this problem sorted by the appointment at the earliest possible moment, preferably by the end of this year, because these elections are approaching, of an individual with the requisite authority of the President of the United States and the assignment of making both the U.S. government policy coherent and clear and effective and communicating that, again, authoritatively to the government of Nigeria, who in the end is ultimately responsible for preventing this catastrophe.